last week we discussed about the stories from the trenches of production. We discussed about what Bergman was saying, defining the direction, and also Eisenstein talking about direction in some other form in terms of advice to his students. Now we are going to discuss the next step to cross the threshold. The next step is reading. Though we discussed in the early stages about reading, now in a different context, what is reading for a filmmaker? When I say a filmmaker has to read a lot, I do not mean that reading books on filmmaking or reading books on script writing, reading books on techniques of cinema or reviews of movies. I do not mean that kind of a reading. Reading is a basis. For example, for anyone, for any creative person, especially writers and filmmakers, anything he or she sees around himself, herself in the world, he or she has to get ideas. What I mean reading in the context of a filmmaker should know about is a filmmaker should have kind of antenna in his head. You know what I mean? Antenna is not physically. For him, he has to be so sensitive to understand what is going on around him or her, so that he or she picks up the matter. For that you need to have the special antenna. So how this antenna develops in a creative person? For that the person has to read a lot. Reading on every subject. Often I say, for a filmmaker, every subject under the sun is allied subject, which I mentioned earlier. So not only books on filmmaking, he has to read about every damn subject, about philosophy, about politics, about social science, about everything. So when you do read on every matter, what happens is your back becomes very, very fertile. When it is too fertile, anything you see, anything you think, anything you converse with someone, anything you observe, immediately it transforms itself into some interesting idea for the kind of work you are planning to do. This is what I mean reading. Read everything, especially start off with newspapers. I am asking you, if you're a young guy who is so much interested in filmmaking, if there are 10 guys sitting in front of me who wants to become filmmaker, who are so passionate about filmmaking, I ask 10 guys, how many of you read newspapers? Out of 10, only 2 raise the hand. Invariably, in any situation, only 2. Those 2 also, they don't read really. The others say, I read some news items on my internet, on my mobile. No, I don't read newspapers, I don't read magazines. When you don't even read newspapers and magazines, what kind of stories you will form? What kind of ideas you would get? Do you know one thing? Person like Hitchcock, Louis Buñuel, many other filmmakers got their ideas for many of their films from just reading the newspaper. So you have to read. For example, I would say very, very interesting. You bring me any day's newspaper, I will pick you up. The basis for at least 5 or 6 short films. Every day newspaper carries news items that serves as a basis for very interesting short films. For example, very, very, very interesting, very jovial, highly entertaining, highly engaging news items are also there. Recently I read a news item. A couple from Philippines were traveling in a flight to go to Vietnam. The flight was going over Chennai. The husband was fast asleep. The wife got bored and she wanted to, since she was bored, she took her husband's mobile, wanted to just browse, not with any intention, just like that, she tried to open the mobile. It asked for the fingerprint of the user. So she pulled the husband's hand who was sleeping, put his finger on the tab, it opened. To her shock, she found all kinds of nonsense photographs. Husband being with many women, in all kinds of positions. She was quite shocked. She thought her husband was a very nice, very moral person in her own way. Having seen this photograph, she was so shocked, and she went on browsing. That's all. Her anger went to a peak. Then, as he was sleeping, she woke. She gave him a big hit on his face. He woke up with a big shock. Then she went on hitting him. Then it became such a chaos in the flight. Both started fighting, rolling all over. Then it was a big chaos in the flight. The pilot had to land the flight wherever it was flying. The flight landed on Chennai airport. Then it became a big news why they had to land a flight which was not supposed to land in Chennai. Then all news reporters, then we found this story. This was the news. Imagine, with this idea, you can create ideas for at least 10 short films in different milieu, different situations. Like that, every day newspaper carries interesting items. Read newspapers. Similarly, you read magazines, especially if you want to make films in your own mother tongue, or in your own culture, rooted to your culture. You find many interesting, not only jovial incident that I mentioned just now, many moving incident. I read an interview of a filmmaker in a magazine, in a Tamil magazine. That filmmaker was planning to make a film on Marina Beach. Chennai is very famous, second largest beach in the world. He was planning to make a film not on Marina Beach. His story takes place on Marina Beach. All his characters stem from, one way or other, the Marina Beach or Marina Beach related professions. So for that, what he did, for a month, he went to Marina Beach, whole morning, whole evening he spent there. One evening he was sitting and observing. He suddenly found an old man who looked very decent, neatly dressed, almost like your dad, your uncle, very decently dressed, as if he's a just retired man. And he was lost. The way he was looking around, he appeared to be very lost. The filmmaker suddenly observed why this old man, decent looking old man, why does he look so lost? Suddenly he was looking around. Suddenly, what he did? Suddenly extended his hand as if he is going to asking for alms. He started begging. Whoever bypassed him. Even those who bypassed him got a shock. Why this man who looks so decent? Begging. They just shocked and moved away. But that man with his lost look went on begging. This filmmaker got shocked. Then slowly he moved towards him and asked him, "Sir, any problem? Can I help you?" That old man again threw a very empty look. He stared at him, as if he lost everything. Then the filmmaker asked him again, "Sir, please tell me any problem. I'm a filmmaker." He introduced himself. "I'm here to help you. Please tell me." Slowly he opened up. Then he started telling his story. The story he said was, he said he just retired from a bank manager job. He was receiving a very good salary. He lost his wife long back. Only son he had. He spent all his money for his study, for his welfare. And recently he married him. He married him off to a very good girl from a very good big family, thinking that his job is over. And the only house he owned after the marriage, he also, he put the house on son's name. He thought, okay, now I'm the happiest person. My son is settled, very happy. The house belongs to him. So he wanted to spend the rest of his life with his son. Just in 2 months, the situation changed. Both the son and daughter-in-law started treating him as if he was a big liability to them. He was shocked that he never expected. Somehow they wanted to get rid of him. Then he said, First the daughter-in-law started treating him like a dirt or a liability. Later he complained about her after much hesitation to his son. See, whenever you are away, your wife treats me like this. To his further shock, the son supported his wife. Then he thought, what the hell is happening? Then he understood both do not want him. Then he thought, what is the point in living this life? I spent all my life for my son. Now I have nothing, no income, no house. I am totally dependent on them. He decided the life is not worth living anymore. He told him, with that idea I came to beach to drown myself in the ocean, to commit suicide. I was walking towards the beach thinking about my son and daughter-in-law. Suddenly I thought, why should I commit suicide? They humiliated me so much. In return, I also want to humiliate them. I was thinking of various ways how to humiliate them. Then I thought, if I start begging in the beach, someone who is known to me, someone who is known to them would definitely observe this, go and inform, hey, your dad is begging at beach. What you would feel at that point? You would feel very humiliated. That is why I started begging. I want them to be humiliated. I want them to be punished. That was my idea. This is a very moving story. Actually, the filmmaker very casually mentioned this incident in his interview. I slightly expanded it because as a storyteller, you do not know how the story develops from one small line. A great scriptwriter, Cesare Zavattini, who wrote scripts for all DC's films, if you are a storyteller, if you have the capability as a storyteller, by these qualifications which I mentioned, reading, knowing stories from the trenches of production, especially by reading, you can make a film on any small news item. A woman goes and buys a pair of shoes in a shop. That was enough for Zavattini to make an interesting script. A little girl goes to school, first day of her going to school. She doesn't want to go to school because she's thrown into a different world. She was all these years, that little girl was with her mom, with her father, with her family. Suddenly she's been thrown out, my God, the first day of school of all the kids. Have you ever been to nursery school on the first day? Have you seen those kids' faces, the way they cried, as if the parents were leaving them on a different planet and they could never return to their original planet, that kind of expression, that kind of crying. We would find stories. I mean, I could go on describing thousands of incidents that we read, we observe in day-to-day life. Because only by reading, because your life is too short. You cannot have every experiences that helps you to come out with interesting ideas or stories. So you have to listen to others' experiences. You have to make others' experiences as if your own experience. That's where you become, very rich at the back of your mind, so that you develop that stem, so that with that stem you can simply scan every damn thing what's happening around you and develop data into stories. So the reading is very, very important. Like that, in different science, again when you talk about science, what kind of science fictions you will get? Today you read newses, now there was a news item, there are some organisms, without male DNA, without having a relationship with a male counterpart, the female can produce an offspring, child. Imagine if that happens to human beings. Therefore, reading is another step you have to take to cross the threshold. Please allot few hours of reading every day. At least an hour you read on different subjects. Seriously. If you think reading is a very difficult thing, then don't desire to become a filmmaker. You are not fit to be in filmmaking because you are so passionate about it. It is like falling in love with a girl. You may fall in love with cinema, but cinema has to fall in love with you. For that, you have to fulfill all these prerequisites. Reading is one.